Hey, this is Joe Gilder from PreSonus. In this video, several of my PreSonus buddies and I will introduce you to a whole bucket load of new features available in PreSonus Studio One version 5.2. First up, the show page. We've added a bunch of your requests to the show page to make it easier to customize your show and your arrangement on the fly. MIDI, if you do a lot of MIDI production, we've enhanced that workflow quite a bit, whether you're using virtual instruments or external synths and hardware. One of my favorite features in Studio One, the splitter tool, has gotten some killer improvements. If you haven't used it yet, check it out. It's incredible. The score editor now has guitar tablature and drum notation. We've expanded key switch support with our brand new sound variations. These allow you to manage and map articulations for even the most complex orchestral libraries. And the cherry on top, our PreSonus Sphere members can now upload and download to and from their workspaces directly within Studio One using our drag and drop workflow. All right, that's enough of me. I'm out of space for stickies. Let's dive in. Now, I've loved Studio One since long before I came to work for PreSonus, and one of the big reasons is they're always making it better. There have been times where I've sent suggestions off to PreSonus about, hey, it'd be great if this feature did this, and the next update comes along and it's there. That feature I wanted is in the software. They listen to their community and they implement a lot of those suggestions into the software. Not only with the big upgrades like version 4 to version 5, but the little ones in between can sometimes feel just as big as the big upgrades. So 5.1, 5.2. Now let me catch you up. When we released version 5, we came out with a brand new product called PreSonus Sphere. PreSonus Sphere gives you access to Studio One Professional, Notion, our notation software, all the Studio One add-ons, such as the different fat channel EQs and compressors and all the instruments in our library, exclusive content from folks like me and Gregor, Marcus Huskins, and others that's exclusively available inside the members portal for Sphere members. But one of the coolest things is the ability to collaborate with other Sphere members using workspaces. Maybe you've checked it out a little bit, but one of the biggest requests we got from folks as soon as we launched version 5 was it would be great if we could access all of these files from within Studio One itself. Up to this point, you've been able to use workspaces, you've been able to export your mixdown and your stems into the workspace, but you can't see what's in there without leaving Studio One and opening up your internet browser to look at PreSonus Sphere. Okay, so now we've added some integration that makes that so seamless, so cool. It works so smoothly, and I can't wait to show it to you. To demonstrate this, I've created a simple song using some stems from a song of mine called Fighter. I want to send this to Gregor, have him access the files via PreSonus Sphere, and let me know any feedback he might have for me. So the way we do that all within Studio One is we open up the browser, and this is where you access your instruments and effects. But if you come over here, click the pull-down menu, and click on Cloud, you'll see this new area. If you are a current PreSonus Sphere member, just double-click here and you'll be in. If you're not a Sphere member, you can join at our website, and then you'll have access to this as soon as you join. Okay, so there's two sections here, collaborations and workspaces. Workspaces are my workspaces I've created. Collaborations are workspaces someone else has created and invited me to. So we're going to go within workspaces here. If we open it up, we can see different workspaces there. I'm going to create a new folder within workspaces, which essentially makes a new workspace. We're going to call it Fighter for GBY, which is Gregor. Okay. If I open up workspaces, we'll see, bam, there it is. I've got a new folder there waiting for me. Now within that folder, just for fun, I'm going to create a stems from Joe folder inside of there so I can have a place to put these stems so it's keep some organization there. Now check this out. I haven't left Studio One. I'm about to send these tracks into my workspace. All I do is select them all and drag them onto the folder. Now, before I let go with the mouse, you'll see we have some options. We can drag them in as raw WAV files. We can hit Command on the Mac or Control on the PC, and it'll switch to WAV with rendered insert effects, which means it'll bounce it down with all the plugins on each channel. Or we could even create a .audio loop file. We're going to go with just raw waves on this one because I don't have any plugins in this session. I let go, and bam, Studio One goes to work rendering each of these and dropping them into my workspace. Okay, the stems are now in my workspace. If I double click on that folder, we can see them right there. Boom, stems are there. Now I want to export a mix down for Gregor to have as well. I can do that just like I've always been able to do it. Command E or Control E to open up the export mix down window. We'll name the file mix for Greggy, and we'll make sure under this publishing section that we have upload to PreSonus sphere selected. And good to go. I say okay. Now Studio One is going to render a mix down just like it always does, but once that's done, it'll pop up a window to ask me where in my PreSonus sphere account I want to place this mix. There it is. I'm going to choose the Fighter for GBY workspace and click upload, and just like the stems, it's going to upload that into the workspace. It'll be there next time I look. By the way, in case you didn't know, there's a little arrow here next to the Start Page button that will animate and move when there's transfers happening up to Sphere, down from Sphere, for example. So you can always know if there's a transfer happening. Once it stops moving, there aren't any transfers happening. And if you don't see what you just uploaded in Sphere, just right-click and choose Refresh. It'll refresh it there, and you'll see that my stems are here in this folder, and my mix for Greggy is right there. Speaking of Gregor, we need to invite him to this workspace. Let's log into PreSonus Sphere on the browser and click on Workspaces, and we can see, ta-da, there's the workspace that we created, all in Studio One, by the way. This is the first time I've opened the browser. Open it up, we can see a timeline of the files that I've shared. We can see a list of files here, and we can add Gregor as a collaborator just by adding his email address here. Okay, invitation sent. I can even leave him a message here in the chat. Hey, Pumpkin, can you please check this out and let me know what you think? Question mark. Bam. Now, it's all in Gregor's capable hands. Over to you, Greg.
Hi guys, this is Gregor for PreSonus, and Joe reached out to me to ask if I could give my opinion on his stems from the song Fighter. I think he wants to set them off to stem mixing or stem mastering or something like that, and just wants to make sure. So let's take a look. And that's easier than ever with version 5.2, because if you're a PreSonus Sphere member, you have even tighter integration of your workspaces and collaborations directly from within Studio One's browser now. So let's take a look. So I just received an email from PreSonus Sphere that there's an unread message in my new Joe's and Gregor's Creative Workspace. And yeah, I just go to PreSonus Sphere, and right here I can already see that Joe asked if I could check this out and let him know what I think. So I can just type sure thing. And now we're gonna switch directly to Studio One, because to access and to audition or download these files, I don't have to do that from the Sphere website anymore. I can do this directly from Studio One. So let me just switch to Studio One right here. And to access the files, we just go to the Clouds tab here in the browser and double click PreSonus Sphere. Now I have the collaborations and workspaces. Joe has already explained that. So collaborations is for all the workspaces which I'm not the owner of. Double click that, and now I can already see that he included a mixdown for me, like a stereo mixdown, and also the individual stems. So let's have a listen to that rough mix first before we go into the stems, because if that already sounds great, then I know that I can give him the green light for sending this off to a mix engineer. The great thing is that I can audition this without actually having to download the file. So I can just hit play, and as you can hear, it's playing directly from the browser in Studio One. I could even play that back in the current song tempo if I want, but in this case that probably doesn't make too much sense. Alright, so far it sounded pretty good. Let me check the drums. But I want to dive a bit deeper into the stems, because I think I hear a bit of a low-end rumble that he might want to get rid of before sending this off. So let's just double click to access the stems. And I think that was either in the bass or in the drums. So let's have a listen to the bass real quick. Yeah, there's a bit of a rumble going on, and there's probably also in the drums. So let's just check both of these really quick in our session. And to download them, all we need to do is just select both of them and drag them over into our song. This will start the download process right away. Alright, download completed. Those are the files. And let me just solo the bass real quick. Yeah, the issue is definitely not with the drums, but with the bass. And to get an even better impression of that, let's just add the spectrometer first. It's a plugin that comes with Studio One. And you can see there's quite a bit of rumble below 50 Hz that we probably don't need. Just gonna take a screenshot of that, just so I can show Joe exactly where the problem is. And what I can do now is just select this file and then check this out. Click on the wave icon here and this opens up the file directly inside of our PreSonus here workspace with a file discussion tab. What that allows us is to add comments, inline comments, directly at a certain timestamp, much like you would know it perhaps from other platforms such as SoundCloud, which is really fantastic for collaborations. So let me show you that really quick. And I can just play that back. And if we just look at it visually, we can already see that the issue is in particular over here. And now I can just hit my spacebar to pause and then click here to enter a message and say, there seems to be quite a bit of low end rumble going on here, right? And to make that point even clearer, I'm just gonna go to the general timeline of our workspace here and drag in that screenshot that I took previously and let him know there seems to be some issue in the low end. Try applying a Pro EQ low cut at around 50 Hz, right? And then upload that now. And now he has both the timestamp where this issue occurred, as well as a suggested solution in the screenshot that I uploaded for him. And there you have it. Those are the brand new workspace integration features in Studio One and PreSonus here.
Hi, my name is Lukas Soschitska, and I have the honor of presenting you the new live arrangement features on the show page in Studio One 5.2. When we released the show page in Studio One 5, we were very curious to hear which features you like to see on the show page. And the #1 feature request was to have sections in your songs that can recall different patches and that you can flexibly switch between during the show. And this is now possible in Studio One 5.2. Let's check it out. The Arranger track is now available on the show page as well, allowing us to define sections and place patch changes within a setlist item. I only need to create patches for each sound or preset I want to play in my song, and then I can assign these patches to Arranger sections. Or I just drag my presets directly to sections, and these are now immediately ready to play. Another very cool addition is that we now have the chord track on the show page, so you'll never forget your chords in your 5-hour shows again. Creating sections and chords for your shows is extremely easy. If you have already created songs on the song page, you can directly send them over to the show page, including all the arranger sections and chords. But you can also add songs, sections and chords directly on the show page. Just double-click or hold Ctrl or Command on Mac to draw new song sections. And if your song doesn't have a fixed tempo and is not perfectly on the grid, you can press Tab to jump to the next transient, so you can easily align your sections to the beats in your song. If you often play shows with backing tracks, you certainly know the challenge. Even though you are playing with a backing track, you still want to be able to stay flexible. Maybe you want to have an intro loop, talk to the audience, and when you're ready to continue, you want to cue into the next part. Or you are in the last chorus of your song and the band is really on fire and you decide to repeat it one more time. That's now possible in the show page. For each arranger section, we can choose between 5 playback modes: continue, stop at end, loop, loop and continue, and skip. Loop and continue allows us to repeat a section for any number of times before playback continues with the next section. Of course, we can also cue sections manually. This works by double-clicking one section or with a keyboard shortcut. If you don't want to jump to that section immediately when you cue it, you can use the new sync mode to have a more musical transition. You decide if you want to switch after 1 bar, 2 bars, 4 bars, or at the end of the section. Once we're done with creating our show, it's time to perform. The new performance view now shows our arranger track and the chord track at the top, and we can drag to zoom and adjust the view to our liking. In the main area we have big pads for our patches, microcontrols and sections. When you start playback and don't do anything, it just keeps playing depending on the play mode of each section. And the icon shows you exactly if the section is set to loop, continue, stop at end, or how often it repeats. When you click one of the pads, this section is queued, so it will play next. Or if you don't want to wait because you're just rehearsing and want to seek to another part, double-click the section to start it immediately, ignoring the sync mode. I can already hear you say, no one wants to look at a computer screen while playing. That's true. And that's why we included the whole performance view in the new Studio One Remote app, so you can control your instrument and effect patches from the keyboard. And you see all your sections in one place, and you can cue them whenever you want. Let me show an example. And what's really awesome about this is that you can loop any section spontaneously. So if I'm playing a short solo at the show and it's really fun, and playing a solo is pretty fun most of the time, then I can just tap this button right here to set this section to loop. And when I'm done with my solo, usually hours later, I can tap the button again to set it to continue or cue another section.
Studio One 5.2 debuts a sound variations feature, our new extended mapping dialog that builds on the key switch editor introduced in 5.0. If you're new to using sound libraries, this kind of editor is needed to be able to switch between the different articulations of a virtual instrument on a single track. Because you can use this map to switch between all kinds of different things, not just articulations, but playing techniques, effects, dynamics, expressions, we've opted to use the umbrella term sound variations. The actual command is made via MIDI, either by sending a MIDI pitch or key switch, MIDI CC or continuous controller data, program or bank changes, or a combination of any of those within a sequence. Here's composer and keyboardist Lukas Ruzicka to take you through it. I'll be back afterwards to announce some exciting news from Vienna Symphonic Library.
Hi, my name is Lukas Ruzicka. What I've been just doing is trying out the new sound variations feature in Studio One 5.2. And this is a really exciting update for every composer and producer working with sample libraries or literally every kind of virtual instruments. With sound variations, you have direct access to articulations such as legato, sustain, or tremolo in your favorite instrument libraries. And the great thing is that it's so incredibly easy to switch between different variations, as I've just demonstrated by using the buttons on my MIDI controller, but you can also use your computer keyboard or key switches, and there are some more pretty cool ways to select them. But before I show you that, let's take a look at the new sound variation mapping editor. When we open up the node editor, we see a new panel right there in the inspector. And when I click on the wrench, the sound variation mapping editor appears. And this is the place where we can add and of course edit all our different sound variations for a certain preset. For example, this string patch from Spitfire Audio's Albion 1. And here I can select any of these sound variations, and as soon as I do this, the instrument switches accordingly. How does this work? It's not magic, it's just key switches that are sent to the instrument. And that's what you can set up very easily in this activation sequence list. Every instrument uses another kind of data to switch articulations. And the good news is that Studio One now enables us with this easy-to-use mapping editor to enter all these different types of data like note events, MIDI-CC messages, program and bank changes, and any combinations of those. The really great thing about that is that we only need to do this once. I just add my variations I need for a certain instrument, give them a name, add the sequence for these variations, and then I can save the whole map as a preset together with my instrument, and that's basically all we need to do. We obviously want to make music instead of, entering numbers. Also, as this is a Spitfire Audio library, articulations can be switched via the URCC protocol. You find two ready-to-use URCC maps in your factory presets, so you can instantly use these maps for all your Spitfire contact libraries. And once we have set up our map, we can just start using it. So let's listen to this string ostinato pattern. It sounds quite okay, but could be a bit more interesting since the whole 4 bars are played spiccato, so let's spice it up with some variations. And here is the brand new way of doing this in Studio One 5.2. Apply sound variations directly to notes. What I only need to do is select some notes, right-click, and here you see all the different variations for this instrument. And once you select one out of this list, only these notes will get the new sound variation. And this works for any note selection, so let me quickly select some more notes in between. Right-click and choose the Colenio articulation. So easy, so fast, isn't this amazing? Let's hear what it sounds like. Or maybe let's hear how it sounds when we choose pizzicato for these notes in between. For this, I'm gonna use the variation list here in the inspector panel. Of course, we can also, just like before, select and draw sound variations in the automation lane right there. Here's another example of using sound variations with the choir library Freya by Stress of Sampling. In this case, I use sound variations to let the choir sing different syllables and words. Didn't I promise to show you an even cooler way of switching sound variations? Here's one of my favorite features. You can create macros to recall different sound variations by their names. For instance, I have added buttons for my mainly used articulations so I can access them anytime directly in the macro toolbar. But that's not all. By using our free Studio One Remote app, which is available for Android, iOS and Windows, I can use the same macros on my tablet. So this turns your mobile device into a touch control surface for controlling articulations in your sample libraries. I can just tap any of the buttons to apply a sound variation to my selected notes. And if I don't have any notes selected, this behaves as a real-time switch for recording sound variations while I'm playing. Sound variations will definitely change the way you've been working with sound libraries, and articulations than Studio One before. Be sure to get ready for more videos on this topic. But before we move on to the other 5.2 features, Chris has another very exciting announcement for you.
As you've just seen, the sound variation editor is a great step forward for Studio One, and there is more to come for it too. But as we were designing this feature, we really began to think, wouldn't it just be better if the mapping editor and the instrument could talk to each other and just magically set itself up, even for the most complex instruments? Well, we're happy to announce a new facility, open to any sample library developer, that allows Studio One to query a virtual instrument and then populate the sound variations dialog automatically. And for the launch of Studio One 5.2, we're delighted to announce support of this new feature by Vienna Symphonic Library, or VSL, and their Synchron player. Using this is a dream. Here's the Synchron VST3, and I'll open the sound variations editor so you can see this happen in real time. All you need to do is just open a Synchron instrument. And there it is. The variations are automatically in folders, and you can see the sequences for even the more complex variations are loaded. Ordinarily, therefore, you don't even need to see this dialog. Just load the instrument and start assigning your variations as you wish. You'll need to update your Synchron player to the latest version for this to work with Studio One 5.2 and later. This update is available right now in your MyVSL account. If you want this to be available in your favourite libraries, then do let them know. This technology is now available to all sample library developers. Please visit PreSonus.software to get started. For now, thanks for watching.
Hey, this is Joe from PreSonus. With Studio One version 5.2, we've added a few mix improvements that I think you're going to like. Let's check them out. The first, you got to know how Studio One works normally. So if I wanted to adjust some of these faders together without having to create a group, you may already know this. If I just select several by holding down Shift and move the faders, they'll just move. However, in the past, you couldn't also adjust the panning of multiple tracks. Well, now you can. I can select all of these channels and simply move the panners, and they all move with me. Where is this useful? I'll tell you, I record a lot of background vocals, like 10 to 20 tracks of background vocals, and I typically want to pan half of them to the left and half of them to the right. With this feature, you can do that a lot more quickly. So I can select all of these and pan them left. Then I can hold down Command on the Mac or Control on the PC, select the other ones, and pan those to the right. Very quick and easy, and then I can still select all of them, move them all to the left, then just Command or Control click on the panner to bring it back to the center. Really great. This is one of the things I requested, and it's so exciting to see it in real life. All right, the second thing I want to show you is killer improvements to our splitter tool. Now, if you've never used the splitter tool, you will finally... I think this is the final thing that you needed to start adding it to your workflow. So let me add Fat Channel to this drum track. So here's Fat Channel. And let's say I want to add a really aggressive compression sound, and I want to do that parallel processing, right? I want parallel compression, the dry drums to come through, and then a copy of the drums to go through the compressor. Now you can do that with a mix knob, or you can do that by duplicating the track and putting it on another track with the compressor, so you have two faders. You can do it by using a send on the original track and sending it to the compressor. Those are all fine, and you can still do those if you want, but the splitter tool makes it a lot easier. Now the way you get there is just like you did in the old days. You click on this little routing button up here in the plugin, and it opens up this new routing window that allows you to bring in a splitter and put that Fat Channel on one side of the split. So this splitter is set to a normal split where it's just sending the signal through both signal paths. Now I can have the really aggressive compressed signal on one side and the dry signal on the other, and I've got individual volume controls for each side, and that all lives inside of a channel. The problem up to this point was as soon as you close this out and look at the mixer, you would just see that you have a compressor on that channel, but you would have to remember, like manually remember, that you had a splitter tool there. And as you can imagine, that can be frustrating. You come back to the mix a week later, you don't remember which channels you have splitters on and are doing some cool parallel processing. And so you may start adjusting the compressor, but it's not doing what you think it should do because it's only affecting half the signal, not the whole signal. You can see how that would get frustrating. For me, that was my experience, so I stopped using the splitter tool because I couldn't see it visually on the mixer. Well, that has changed. You may have noticed when I added the splitter tool, check this out. On the drum channel itself, it now has a new plug-in slot called splitter. And I can do a couple of things here. Double-clicking it lets me open up the splitter, of course. Single-clicking on it expands and allows me to turn on and off each side of the splitter. And then I can even rearrange plugins without having to open up that splitter at all. So you can see there I moved this to before the splitter, and now it is after the splitter. And if I want to put it back into the splitter, I can do that by double-clicking on splitter, coming up here, dragging that fat channel back where it was. And if I have multiple splitters on a channel, because you're getting nuts, you'll have multiple of these little splitter plug-in insert slots on the channel. So now I can look at a glance at my mixer and see, I've got a splitter on that particular channel. And it's nice that it has a different emblem too that shows a splitter, so it's easier to pick that up visually. I love that. I'm super excited to incorporate splitter into my workflow more now that I can be sure that I know where it is at all times. Big shout out to our software team for adding that. And the last feature I want to show you is audio clip versions. With version 5, we released clip gain envelopes, which was new. Now we've expanded that a little further to include audio clip versions. Now there's two main applications for this where I think it would make sense that you might use in your productions. So what it is a single piece of audio, a single clip, can now have multiple versions based off that same piece of audio. So if you do things like adjusting the clip gain envelope or adding Melodyne to that particular clip, you no longer have to render that down, bounce it down, create a new file from that to have two different versions. You can just save them as versions and access those within Studio One without having to take that extra step of rendering it down. Here's one quick example. Let's take this audio file here. This is a vocal. Let's add a gain envelope and let's just do some adjustments. Like we want this to swell in and then drop down at the end. Something like that. Now, if I duplicate this, we'll see it's the same on both, right? However, if I want to save this one as a different clip version, I can come down here to Audio and choose New Clip Version. Now check out what happens. This first one now has a small number 1 down in the bottom left-hand corner, and this second one has a number 2. Now, if I make adjustments to this one, you'll notice those adjustments are not happening to the first one. They're still based on the same piece of underlying audio, so we're not duplicating audio files unnecessarily, but now we can have as many of those versions as we want. This also works with Melodyne. If I duplicate this again, right-click, choose audio, new clip version. Now this is version 3. I can do something like remove the gain envelope, Command M to open Melodyne, and now I can add some different tuning to this vocal. Oh, that's beautiful. Now, if that's one harmony and I want to reharmonize that again, I can. Check it out. I just duplicate this piece of audio, and now I come down here and I say audio, new clip version. Now I've got two versions of this clip. So I can take this one and I can make that one sound even better. And I've got two different versions of the same clip with Melodyne on them. And finally, these audio clip versions are available in the pool, so we can quickly say, I tried version 1 and version 2. I think I like version 1 for both. I can drag that version 1, hold down Option on the Mac, and just select it there. And it will now turn this clip into, they're both now version 1 of that audio clip. All right, those are the 3 mix and song page improvements for Studio One version 5.2. Thanks for watching.
Hello, I'm Chris Swaffer, Product Manager for all things notation at PreSonus. Studio One 5.2 includes 3 of our most requested score features: guitar tablature, drum mapping, and voices. Firstly, let's talk tab. Now when you select a star preset of guitar, you'll be able to see both standard notation and tablature. These 2 staves are synchronized and you can enter notes on either. If you click the note duration onto the tab, then you can type the fret number you want. Or if you enter on the standard notation staff, then Studio One will select an appropriate low tab position. The same happens if you have recorded in with a MIDI instrument in real time, or entered notes in the other editors. If Studio One has not chosen the string you had in mind, then just drag the number to another string. The fret number will update automatically. The other new staff type is tablature only. When this is selected, only a tab staff is shown, and in addition, rhythmic stems are now added to the fret numbers. Of course, not every fretted instrument has the same number of strings, nor share the same tuning. So how do you write for your acts of choice? You can select from a number of different instrument tunings. When you make a change, the number of strings will update in the tablature, and the fret numbers will renumber accordingly. If you see question marks, it's because the note is either too high or too low to be played on a given string. Drag the fret number to another string, or transpose to put the notes into a playable octave. Now, let's move on to drum notation. When using drum libraries, you'll know that the pitches used don't marry up with standard drum notation. To maintain both the playback pitches and view the notation as expected, a mapping between the two is required. Studio One 5.2 introduces a drum map editor, along with a few nifty tools to speed up the process. Let's take a look. So here I have an impact kit, so all the drum names were already populated here. Let's go to the score editor. I'm now going to drag in a sick groove. And pow. Now, a few things have happened here automatically. We can see that the staff type has automatically switched to drum set, and therefore the percussion clef has been selected. Then in terms of the note mapping, Studio One has taken a best guess, rather than you having to start from scratch. It's first pulled the notes from very low or high octaves and centered them around the visible staff. It then looked for obvious drum names, like snare or hi-hat, and placed them in their standard positions. It's then had a go at the note heads, changing cymbals to cross note heads, for example. And as you can see from the stems up and stems down, it has automatically placed the notes into two separate voices. If it's not exactly right, of course you can manually adjust the map quickly and easily with this little preview. Select either the name in the drop-down or a single note in the drum staff itself. Then drag the preview up and down to the pitch of your choice. Select the note head and even the drum technique if required. This is then immediately reflected in the staff. When you are entering notes, you have a handy reminder of the drum map in the cursor, and the preview also shows any custom note heads and techniques selected. That's for a PreSonus instrument, but what about other libraries? You will need to enter drum pitches, which you can select, type, or use a MIDI instrument to enter, and the drum names, which you can enter in either the drum editor or in the score editor. It makes no difference. And then you can set your mappings using the preview or drop-downs. Once you are done, this drum preset will be saved with a document, but you can save it as a new drum preset to quickly recall each time. And lastly, talking of presets, we've of course included a general MIDI drum map, which, even if it doesn't exactly match a library, is a great time-saving start, and you could use it as a basis to create a new preset. One of the most requested features of the score editor was the ability to write in more than one voice in a given staff. And in Studio One 5.2, you can now write in up to 4 voices per staff. Select the voice required in the drop-down menu, and then enter notes as before, either manually with the mouse or in step time. And if you have entered a phrase but now realized you want it in a different voice, you can use the new Center Voice tool. For more advanced options on stem direction, you can always send over to Studio One's sister notation software, Notion. So that's tablature, drum mapping, and voices for Studio One 5.2. There are also a couple of new tools in doubling notes at a particular interval, as well as being able to quantize note data to the actual printed notation. And there are several under-the-hood improvements too, most notably in how Studio One automatically groups rests. Thanks for watching.
Hi everybody, this is Gregor Bayerle, PreSonus software specialist, and I have the great honor to give you an overview of the workflow improvements that we have in Studio One 5.2. Our popular arranger track that is now available both on the song page as well as the show page is now capable of live looping. This allows the user to switch freely between arranger sections during playback, always a perfect sync. Great for live performing and to try out different combinations before committing to a playback order. The popular arranger track in Studio One has just become even more powerful with the addition of live arranging. And I want to demonstrate this with a song from my band Voltmeister called Mechanismo. Voltmeister is a project where we do pretty much everything with modular synthesizers. We record everything that we're gonna use in the song over the course of a couple of hours. And what we really wanted to do is try different arrangement orders on the fly before committing to an actual song playback order. And this is exactly what we're able to do now. So because of our process, you can see that all of the individual sections that constitute the song are there, but there's no order in place. For instance, we recorded the intro way after the theme, because the theme was the actual point where we decided, hey, this is a cool song, let's not discard it. And so, even though all the building blocks of a song are there, the structure of a song is completely up in the open. And just being able to try this out with a couple of clicks is just very convenient, creative, and inspiring. So here's a quick audio demo of what this would be like. Start with the intro, even though that's the third section. And as soon as we're ready, we can launch the next section by simply double-clicking it in the arranger track, or clicking here on the left in the arranger track inspector. And it's gonna respect the sync mode that is set here. So 2 bars would mean that you're triggering the next section in a 2-bar grid, 4 bar would mean in a 4-bar grid, and so forth. Can also be 1 bar, if you want it more spontaneous. Perfect. Or it could also be at the end, so the section would play all the way through and then it would go to the next selected one. And you're gonna get a seamless transition from one section to the other without skipping a beat. Yeah, and this way you could just start looking for an entirely new playback order. So what if we start with this? Cool, then just drag that to the beginning of your song. Then think about what could be after that. And if you like that, just drag it over again. And then you build from there. You get the idea. Studio One 5.2 also brings one of the most popular feature requests for anybody working with MIDI, which is the Smarter MIDI tool. This enables you to unmute or mute notes, edit velocities, combine or split, all without ever changing your tool. Very fast and effective. Let's take a look. When editing note events inside the piano view, the arrow tool turns into a real MIDI smart tool at higher zoom levels. Click anywhere in the upper area of the note, then drag up or down to change its velocity. Alt and click in the upper area of the note to mute or unmute the note. Click anywhere in the lower area of the note to split the note. If you do the same thing but holding down Alt, you can actually do a deep split, which will split both the note event as well as its part container. Clicking in the lower area between 2 adjacent notes with the same pitch will glue them. As always, the best way to learn a new tool in Studio One is to use the info view, which you can open up by clicking on the question mark in the menu bar. This will always look at your current mouse cursor position and inform you about all possible options. The ability to transform instruments and audio tracks is an absolute key feature of Studio One. And in version 5.2, this is now also possible with external MIDI instruments, such as the ones behind me. Let me show you why that's so powerful. The ability to transform external instruments makes it even easier to seamlessly integrate your favorite hardware synths into Studio One. To do this, just right-click and transform, just like you would with any virtual instrument. This will record your instrument in real time so that it's freed up to do other stuff. You can even render your software effects in right away. Best of all, not only are you still able to access the original MIDI data from the audio file, which was always so mind-blowing to me about Studio One, but also, in case you have to go back to the original instrument track, our preset and bank manager for external instruments will make sure that the exact preset that you used is being recalled. You guys, that's pretty much total recall for all of your external synthesizers that have a preset bank. And don't forget that you can now set your hardware patches on a per section basis on the show page. A common source of frustration for many Studio One users are crashing plugins, which can actually cause Studio One to crash as well. We now have an entirely new diagnostics tool for that. This will make it much easier to get in touch with tech support, access your log file directly, or even tell you which plugin crashed exactly so that you can update it and fix the problem at the source. Let's take a look. After Studio One crashed and you open it up again, you will get this new Studio One safety window. Not only will this provide you with a shortcut to the crash log, which you can then send to our tech support, you can also disable VST2, VST3, Rewire, audio unit plugins, and so forth for advanced troubleshooting. And in some cases, you might even see the name of the plugin that crashed right away when you're starting up. If you ever try to find the crashing plugin like the needle in the haystack, this is a game changer. Studio One 5.2 also brings a much improved tempo detection, amazing for beatmakers and beginners in particular. In order to be able to time stretch to the highest quality and without any artifacts, it's very important to know the original BPM of a clip, simply because an equation that starts out with the wrong assumption is most likely not going to be correct. Unfortunately, there are still many loop libraries around that don't provide any BPM information, which means that Studio One has to do a bit of guesswork to figure it out. Fortunately for us, Studio One got even better at this in version 5.2. Studio One now applies a number of different methods to determine the original tempo of an audio loop. Whenever you're working with an audio file that doesn't have any tempo information embedded, you're gonna see the BPM that Studio One is guessing in red in the event section of the track inspector. You can approve the tempo, double or half the tempo, or adjust it manually. Once the original BPM has been added, you're good to time stretch. Last but not least, let's talk about some of the improvements that flew a little bit under the radar, but are very exciting nonetheless. These improvements include the awesome new command unpack selected layers to tracks, to only show tracks with actual events in your song, basically a one-click method to declutter your entire production, compatibility with Apple Silicon Macs, the long-awaited full screen mode for Windows, which you'll find in the View menu, or you can toggle it with the Shift+F hotkey, and also an increased buffer for retrospective record to make more space for automation data and MPE, but more on that in my AtomSQ segment later. The AtomSQ gets some highly anticipated updates with Studio One 5.2 as well. It is now possible to control key parameters of a pattern such as probability, repeat, or offset delay directly on the unit itself without ever having to touch your mouse. Other highlights include the famous auto mapping of plugins, which we already know from the Faderport series, which is now also on the AtomSQ, and retrospective record, for instance, which can be triggered also directly from the unit. When you press the user button on AtomSQ, you now have access to 8 fully customizable command pages instead of 4. This gives you up to 24 more key commands and macros that you can trigger from AtomSQ. One of the most exciting use cases for this are the new sound variations that Lucas was showing you earlier. With the new find and apply variation command, which can be combined with any search tag of your choice, you can recall sound variations of any instrument if there's a matching name. So if there's a variation called pizzicato, I can just press pizzicato on AtomSQ and I'm immediately able to play in that articulation. And once again, this is going to work with all of your orchestral libraries. There's also a whopping 7 more controlling pages, and that is amazing for plugin control. And all of your encoder assignments are being remembered globally across all of your sessions. Best of all, we have brought the much loved autofill feature of plugin parameters that you have on FaderPort 8 and 16 onto the AtomSQ now. So if you have a third-party plugin that isn't mapped out yet, you can just press this button and it's gonna fill all of the available pages with the parameters that are being reported by the plugin. This makes plugin control that much more immediate. To skip through the controlling pages, simply hold down User and then press one of the bank buttons A to H to go to pages 1 to 8. Retrospective Record, a feature very close to my heart, can now be triggered from AtomSQ as well. Retrospective Record has been one of the highlights of Studio One 5.1, and it's amazing for anybody who likes to jam along but sometimes just forgets to press record first. And as Murphy's Law has it, these are the exact moments where you play your most beautiful progressions. And it would have been lost traditionally if you didn't press that red record button first. But Retrospective Record is able to retrospectively, as the name says, recall this performance so it doesn't get lost. In Studio One 5.2, we've increased the memory of Retrospective Record even more to make more space for automation data and MPE. You can trigger Retrospective Record directly from AtomSQ now with the button combination Shift plus Bank F. Finally, my personal favorite update of AtomSQ in 5.2 is that we are able to control key parameters of pattern such as offset, repeat, probability or velocity directly on the per step basis on the unit now. To edit velocity, repeat, delay or probability of each step in your pattern, hold down the respective step key and use the encoders 5 to 8 to adjust velocity, repeat, delay and probability in that order. Right now I'm adjusting the probability of that double kick drum. Alternatively, go to the third editor page and use the menu buttons to specify which of the parameters you'd like to adjust. Then you can turn the more tactile rotary encoder at the very right for even more precise control. When you're on the third editor page, tapping a key will select it and holding down a key will add an additional step. Studio One 5.2 also brings some very exciting updates for FaderPort 8 and FaderPort 16. It is now possible to cascade them to have a chained channel view instead of 2 independent ones, and there's also some very exciting other features, so let's check it out. It is now possible to combine multiple FaderPort 8 and 16 to increase the number of simultaneously accessible channels, which was the #1 feature request from our FaderPort users. The device order can be configured very conveniently inside of the Control Surface Placement dialog found in the External Devices menu. See, just drag and drop your order around. The FaderPort 16 can be the first device or the FaderPort 8, or of course you can also keep them completely independently by simply not grouping them. One of the major new features of this update is that FaderPort 8 and 16's All Bank is now always in sync with the Studio One mixer console. Before, this was only possible if you would hit Shift and User mode, and Remote had to be activated in the console list as well. This frees up the user mode on FaderPort 8 and 16 to exclusively use it to have an independent channel view from Studio One's mixer on the FaderPorts. There's also a bunch of smaller but nonetheless meaningful improvements to FaderPort 8 and 16, so let's go through those in quick succession. When in Sense mode, the bypass button on FaderPort will now bypass all sense on the currently selected channel. Touching a fader will reset it to its default position, but only if you're holding down Shift at the same time. Previously, this would also happen when Shift mode was enabled permanently, for example, when switching to the alternative bank views. Activating a click and adjusting its level can be done for each individual output separately on the FaderPort now. To do so, press the Shift and Bus button to go to the Outputs page, and then you can push down the little rotary encoder at the top left that is usually used for panning to activate the click, turn it on and off, or turn it to adjust the click level. And last but not least, FaderPort's shift mode latch behavior is much more refined now. This means that holding down shift to access the secondary function won't switch to shift mode permanently anymore. This was a much requested feature by power users in particular. Of course, pressing down just the shift button quickly will still take you to the shift mode.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. If you're already a version 5 user, you can upgrade to 5.2 by simply opening Studio One and clicking the Update button on the Start page. If you're not a version 5 user, or maybe not even a Studio One user, but you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. There are 2 ways to get Studio One. The first is to just purchase it outright. The second is to become a PreSonus Sphere member. This gets you access to Studio One Professional, Notion, our notation software, a whole bunch of add-ons and plugins for Studio One and Notion, exclusive content from folks like myself and Gregor and others, and also access to the online workspaces and collaboration features that we talked about in this video. To find out everything you need to know, head over to studio1.presonus.com. Thanks for watching. Nailed it.